I forgot my line.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
What is the line? Freak,
I'm
what
your
is
host.
No,
Welcome
what do I
back,
start?
ladies and gentlemen, to the subject matter. I'm your host,
It's
Steven
hello,
Jenkins.
ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the subject. I legit, final episode of season 3, just forgot the last my line to say. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the subject matter. I'm your host, Steven Jenkins, here with your co-host, Mr. Jonathan Dayton, and junior host, Addy Dayton. We're experts in nothing, here to give you our thoughts and opinions on all of it. So we have just 2 episodes left until Christmas, and then, as we've said before, we're going to be doing a live stream the Wednesday in between Christmas and New Year's. So it should be pretty fun. Come stop by, ask some questions, whatever you want answered. We might answer because we can't guarantee we're going to answer every
I
single
will answer
question.
every question that's asked of me.
That's my concern. So
everyone.
But yes, anyway, so we're going to have a little bit more of a serious episode, the last 2 episodes of the show. This episode is going to be split into 2 parts, and we're going to be talking about Addy and Jonathan's journey through IVF and infertility, and the clear result that has, happened. And so it's like Jonathan said last week, Christmas is the fun, it's the traditions, it's everything, but it's also the, you don't want to say sappy, but heartwarming, stuff. And I think that that's certainly important to highlight. So, just enjoy the next 2 episodes. They're going to be a little bit shorter, and we'll get started. So I guess, Addy, whoever wants to hop in, start at the beginning. When did you find out, and what was your first reaction, and what did you guys do?
Yeah, I guess we got to start at the very beginning first.
Yeah.
Got married, and of course, we were together for a couple years before we decided that we wanted to have a child. That was, I guess, the start of that. And then during that same time frame, then there was birth control involved because we didn't want to have a child the first couple years of our marriage, which then led us up to kind of the point on the start of the infertility journey.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I say journey because it was a journey.
Yeah. So we obviously, like you said, we got married. The first year of marriage, we, were like, okay. And then there were just like some signs before we even decided we wanted to have children that something was not right with my body. So that's when we found out that I was going through infertility, and that kind of not helped us with our decision. We always knew we wanted to have kids, but then it was kind of like we didn't know how long the journey would be. And now I'm very glad we started when we did, because that's been 4 years now. And we're just now seeing our miracle happen. So, of course, like, no one wants to hear that. But being young, I think everyone was kind of telling us the same thing. Like, you'll have time. You don't have to worry about it. But now that we've been through so much, I'm glad we worried about it when we did. Because it took a long time and a long journey.
Yeah, it did take a long time. There's never a right... I mean, there is a right time, I think, in people's heads, but I think that when God bless you with a child, he's going to bless you with a child. However, we got married at a young age, and I was 19, and Addy were you 19 or 20 at the time?
I just turned 20.
You just turned 20. So, again, married at a young age, and so we waited a couple years to get things settled in our lives. Of course, school, work, house, all that fun stuff that comes along with marriages, and then we decided we wanted to have a child, which, for us was the right time. However, I think people also have it in their heads, when the right time is for you. And, it truly isn't the same. It truly does vary. And I think that we were glad, and I'm glad, like Addy just mentioned, that we did start early in the journey, because I think that if we didn't start as early, then we probably would be with even further back than what we wanted to be with the current pregnancy and everything of that nature.
So to get a little bit more specific, so when you hear the news that you're unable to have kids at the time, what is the first? So not to get too deliberately specific, but what was the first thing that you guys did? Was it immediately just take a step back? Was it, okay, we got to start this now? You guys said that you did start pretty much right away. But what were some of the options that you considered, and how did you go about that?
I think one of it was really taking a step back. I think it affects 2 people, and especially sitting in a doctor's office, you didn't have time to communicate right then and there. So luckily, we had time to just go home and kind of we're also very different. I'm much more emotional and not thinking in the moment, where he's one that maybe doesn't have all his emotions in it, but is thinking. So it took like a lot of times, but with infertility, there's so many more options than I didn't know possible. You can still just continue to try naturally and hope and pray. And then there's like medications, and then there's IUIs and IVF. So it kind of like all goes up in intensity of what you have to do and what it will do in your body. And so I think like I would have just the next day been like, okay, let's do IVF and skipped everything. And Jonathan was kind of more of the like head on his shoulders still, that like there's other options that wouldn't take such a toll on your body. And we don't know a lot of answers yet because there's a lot of testing that needed to be done, where I just wanted to like skip all that, because as soon as I heard the words, it didn't matter that there was like a percentage of this or a percentage of that. I just heard you can't have kids, and that kind of...
Let's be honest, folks. Addy doesn't think. 99% of the time. And I say that in the nicest way possible, but if she wants something or if she sees something that's impossible, she'll just immediately jump to, where you're going to do this, this, and this to make this happen without thinking about anything in between of how that's going to happen. And I guess Addy was right, though. We did take a step back. I took a step back, too. But also, we have to realize that, I was adopted and my family went through this process at one time before. At least my parents did, not necessarily me. So I had a different outlook as to what the next steps are going to be.
Right.
What are our options? What are the financial costs? What is it going to take medically? How much travel we're going to have to take? And who's going to do it? Is it going to be local or not local? So that was going through my head, as far as next steps. And Addy's next steps were, we're going to have a child, so we're going to do this, this, and this to make that happen, but not any of that.
Sure. No, that makes sense. What are some, because you mentioned some of the different options that you had. So what was, I keep saying start at the beginning. Start at, what's the base option that you guys went for?
So we started really simple, which is just a medication. So for like those who know anything about infertility, I just didn't ovulate. So like we knew it was me. We don't say the problem, but that I was the situation at hand. So
she is a troublemaker, so that is usually how this falls.
And so they were like, you can just start simple with a medication that can have you ovulate. And so we did that medication you have to do it like 3 months at a time, and then stop, and 3 months at a time. That's the hardest thing, I think, with all of it, is everything's time sensitive. And when you want something and you have a passion for it, I just want to throw the time out the window. So we did that, and then like it got a more advanced medication, which then, of course, my body decided it was going to be allergic to and just pass out and do things it should not do. So after about a year and a half of just like pills and medication, they were like, you need to go somewhere else. So we stayed local at first and did all we could do local, just because, one, financially, that was a lot better for us. I could get myself to appointments. Save time. And then we decided we needed to actually go to an infertility specialist, which, believe it or not, they don't have around here. So we started in Frederick, and the facility was great. I thought it was perfect, and that's where we learned about IUIs, which is like a set of shots, but it's not as far as IVF. So IVF is where they like make the baby outside of you. IUI is like the shots, but the baby's still being made inside of you. And the easiest way to... Does that kind of seem like a simple way to understand it?
Yeah, I think the other breakdown, too, is it's not that our local office... I mean, locally it was great at first, but our local office isn't just a standard OB office.
Yeah.
It's not a fertility specialist clinic, and so the OB can only do so much to increase your likelihood and chances of, getting pregnant. And then from there, we did go to Frederick. We learned about different options.
If you want to, because you're more medically inclined than either of us, so if you want to give a more, for those interested, in-depth, maybe not too in-depth, but a little bit more in-depth of how the treatments work and what exactly they're doing, just for people that are curious.
Sure. So I'm not an OB specialist, for one, but, I think problem that we all seen was the fact that Addy's body wasn't ovulating. And ovulation is when you drop an egg into the proper space so that the sperm can fertilize that egg to create a child. When there's no egg, well, you can't have a child.
And there's no chicken.
Yeah.
Basically,
right? When you want a cheeseburger and there's no meat on the buns, you can't have a cheeseburger, right?
Right.
And so that was the problem.
That's an example, all right.
Exactly, right? And so that was problem one. But the OB office can fix that by giving medication to speed up the ovulation process. We also have to backtrack a little bit further and go back to the root of the cause as to why this even happened, which we don't know. We can speculate, and we could say that we know, but we really truly don't know, and this could be a variety of things that could take place. But the birth control medication could have played a factor into the messed up cycle, which screwed up the ovulation period, which created our body not to ovulate, which means that you can't have a child. Again, the burger analysis, and you know where I'm going with that.
I'm calling your child Burger for the first 3 years of their life from now on.
Anyways, then that
like
speeds up to the other options of of getting pregnant. And Addy mentioned IVF, the option that we chose, which takes and actually injects the sperm into the egg outside of the womb and then is placed into the womb. The shots that everyone sees on television or on social media, that's just preparing the body of the lady to receive that egg and sperm inside of her uterus. Then what happens is it's injected through a miniature pipette, and when you think of, millions of sperms in a very small egg, it is very tiny, into the uterus, hoping that would stick on the uterine wall, then create a child, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Did it work for us? No, not the first time. And I can't say that it even worked in general. So taking just one step at a time, we say, I think that, at the beginning of the episode, we can say that she's pregnant, which is great. We also can't say that IVF worked because it didn't work.
We had a chemical miscarriage.
We'll get to that in just
a moment.
Yeah, just a second. Go ahead.
So, of course, went to Frederick, the full story and journey. Went to Frederick and spent some time there, and then learned about another infertility place, which was in Morgantown, which was closer to us by about 20 minutes, but also financially was going to be better for us. The doctors there, were just as nice as the ones in Frederick were. Staff there was great, and they, would work with us a little bit closer and easier. And so we decided to switch and go from Frederick to Morgantown, which ended up being one of the best decisions of our entire life and our entire journey to where we are now. So I'll stop there a moment and let you.
No, that's fine. I was before we get to the good part, if that makes sense. I wanted to go over because there was obviously for both of you, and I'll get to each of you on both of these topics. For both of you, there was mental and physical toll through the whole journey, and so we'll start because you had a little bit. It was mental for you, but physical is more so for Jonathan. What were you feeling in terms of how the whole process was? Obviously, we know you have a little bit more of an analytical, logical brain.
I was sad, happy, and tired and emotional all at the same time. I think the thing that was hardest for me was seeing Addy go through just mental stress, which was hard. Of course, physically, seeing that on your spouse is hard, but I don't think it was necessarily the physical thing that really got me. It was just the mental stress because she wanted the child so much, and her body was. I'm not going to point fingers, but I'm going to point a finger was the reason, right? Why we couldn't have a child. And so, seeing the blame be placed on oneself is, extremely hard. But also in the same token, the rational side of me, had to rationalize with her upsetness, if that's the word, because, you can't let this take over your entire life. You can't let the journey of infertility take over your entire life, because if you let something that's not good in your life manifests itself into everything that you do 24/7, then ultimately, in my mind, my humble opinion, then you can't go anywhere. You're stuck in that rut, and you end up, not doing daily tasks, not doing things that you should be doing, not taking on responsibilities that you have. Ultimately, puts a lot of stress on a marriage because it's not just infertility. It's not just part of the marriage. It's other pieces. Right. It's the puzzle.
There's more to it.
But again, being more analytical and having that level head, I understood that, but relaying that message across to Addy, and she can sit there and smirk at me, is extremely hard because she's just as hard-headed as I am in the regards of we don't like to listen to each other's opinions that often. When we have our own opinion, we usually just kind of run with it. And so that was an extreme burden on our marriage. But, we got through that, of course, and we're here today. But for anyone that goes through that journey needs to realize that it is just as hard on the other person, regardless of who is, fault's not the right word, but whoever's at fault or whoever's going through the most of the medical portion of it, it's just as hard on the other person for a variety of other reasons.
Right. Yeah.
I'll stop.
No, that's fine. No, that's good. And then Addy, for you, because you had both the physical and emotional as well.
I think physical, it was pretty. I am like an anti-shot person, so just starting the journey. I mean, you had to do blood work every 2 weeks, and that was for like a year. And then we had shots morning, afternoon, 2 here, 2 there. And then for me, I'm someone that's super self-conscious, and no one told me with infertility that you would gain weight and have all the side effects of pregnancy and then not be pregnant. So like I felt pregnant 24/7 and never was. So physically it was definitely challenging, but I think mentally was more of it, especially because it did take over more parts of our life than just infertility, because I could never get it off my mind. So like even if shots were just morning and evening and we had nothing that day, I still spent all day like thinking about it. And then you'd have good days, and then you'd get on social media and so's pregnant. So it's like things that it shouldn't affect, but until you go through it, you don't realize it's going to. You don't want to go to baby showers anymore. You don't want to go anywhere anymore because people have the tendency to ask, like, when are you going to get pregnant?
Yeah, I'm going to put that PSA out there. Don't ask anyone when they're going to get pregnant or when they're going to do something in their life that you think they should be doing. And this is, the more anger side of me. But,
This is going to be my next question, so this is good.
It really does. It's not your place to interject your opinion into someone else's life when you think they're going to do something that you want them to do. I mean, a lot of people in our friend circle and in our family, and of course just mutual friends, and love them all to death. However, all the time we're like, when are you going to have a child? When are you going to have a baby? And some of them knew what we were going through. Other ones didn't. And so I can't necessarily fault them in that regard. But all the time it was questions of when you're going to do something in your life.
There's a tactful way to do it. It's, hey, out of curiosity, are you guys thinking about doing that? Or is that not in the plan?
That would have been better.
Not, when are you going to do this, or why haven't you yet?
Yeah, that would have been a better way to phrase it. But all the time, and it just was more annoying than it was anything. And again, it's human nature, because I'm not saying I'm perfect and I don't do that, because I think of questions that I probably shouldn't ask other people either, and just comes out and you ask it, right? But again, it was constantly that same question over and over and over again, and it got not only old after a while, it just, because the pain was there, it just got progressively worse.
It just gets progressively, right, yeah. And that was going to be kind of my next question too, is like, what are some of the misconceptions, it kind of goes hand in hand with what you were just saying, but for you also, what are some of the misconceptions about your situation that people never really seem to understand? Or what are some of the things that people have said to you, either maliciously or unintentionally malicious, that other people can be more aware of going forward? Which for things like that, I think
is important. I think
Facebook is a thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is maybe a few here and there. I don't think anyone was ever trying to intentionally, but I think we heard a lot was like, just don't stress. I think everyone just assumed it was just stress. And yeah, you're stressed, but even if I wasn't stressed, my body physically was not doing what it was supposed to do. So everyone was just like, don't stress. Or they'd be like, you're so lucky you're young, which we were, but like, it doesn't take away the pain. We're still hurting. So right. I think in people's mind, we're like, whoa, you're under 30, so
we got a child when we're 28 or 29, but we wanted a child at that point in our life.
Yeah.
That was how we planned our life. And yeah, we're young, and that's, a great thing that we do have time on our side. Doesn't take away the pain, and doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
Again, there's a tactful way to say things.
Yeah.
And hey, you're lucky you're young is not the right way to say it. Something more along the lines of, this is, terrible that it happened, but just pointing this out, count your blessings, just so you know. You do have a chance here. I think that's a lot better than
being like you're lucky.
Hey, guess what? You're good.
Yeah,
because it's not how it works.
Like, so Jonathan and I obviously we're strong in our faith. We believe in miracles, and I think a lot of actually other Christians. I didn't realize it was such a strong in some beliefs that like IVF was like almost against God's belief, and people were I was very shocked from different churches were like, well, you just have to pray. Like, you should not be going through IVF. But, like, God gave us these doctors and this, you know what I mean? Like, to me, I was blown away because never in my life growing up, even in a Baptist church was I taught that IVF was wrong.
I'm not going to open a Pandora's box because
I was going to say, that's a whole other topic.
topic
but,
of religion and IVF and doctors and medicine. And we learned that during COVID pretty strongly about people's opinions. Again, I'm not going down that road, but it was challenging because everyone had their opinion. And that's great. And I have my opinions about lots of things. But sometimes it's best just to keep your opinion
to not share
yourself, right?
Said opinion. Especially when you know it's going to actively go against something that somebody else is trying to say.
We had already made our decision. But I think a lot of this is why I decided that we were going to go public. So Jonathan was definitely more of the quiet, private one. But I have no problem with saying I go to therapy. I needed a lot of help going through this. And she realized, like, one of my things is I was tired of saying the same thing 500 times.
And explaining it over and over again.
Because people aren't trying to be hurtful, but once we decided that we were going to be open and, like, I started making TikToks and things like that, people weren't asking the same questions. They were actually educating themselves and then asking, like, educational questions. I don't care if you ask questions. I mean, I love now talking about it. A lot of people want to know about the process and the cost and things like that. To me, those are educational questions.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it is. But, like, I'm great with educating people. The questions about, like, when are you having this child? That was hard. So once we became open, I think a lot of those comments, or even just, like, birth announcements, I had a friend that I was really close with that got pregnant, and she realized so much more, like, what we were going through, and, like, she had me come to her house, and, like, the way she went about announcing it was so much more genuine and, like, real, and it didn't hurt. Because she cared, and she wasn't, like, throwing it in my face. Not that some people throw it in your face, but, like, they don't think what you're going through. So they're like, oh, this was so easy. We didn't even mean to, and here we are with our 8th child. And to me, it's not easy.
Right. Yeah.
So even though, like, the questions were hard, I think it got us to the point of being open.
So that finishes up the episode for today. We will be So that finishes up the episode.
We'll be diabetic.
What?
Diabetic.
Nothing.
I had to do a second take. So that finishes up the episode for today. We're going to be back next week, finishing up a couple of questions, talking about some of the comments and things like that. And then we're going to get to the good part, which is the evidence that you see before you. So thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. Don't forget to tune in to our live stream that we'll be doing. I believe it's December 28th. I think we don't have a specific time for that, but we will be releasing info about, I can't talk today, about that on our social medias, so stay tuned, and we will see you guys next week. As always, we don't have an outro. We'll see you later.